My name is Cass Opal, and I am your Director of Communication and Membership here at First United Methodist Church, Omaha. I am also a certified candidate for ordination as deacon. I am a full-time student, and I am also the mother of neurodiverse and LGBTQ+ children. And I myself am a disabled woman who also has autism and ADHD and did not receive a diagnosis until I was in my 30s. Today, I want to talk about the hidden virtue of perseverance. Because truly speaking, were it not for perseverance, I would not still be here today. It started in my 20s. I just had my second child and my back went out. That is when I learned I had degenerative disc disease, which means that the fluid in my spine was rapidly degrading and that the disc spaces in between my vertebrae would just continue to crunch and bulge and get worse as I got older. At the age of 27, I had as much fluid in my spine as someone in their 70s. By the time I was 33, I had had 4 lumbar surgeries, including a 3-level spinal fusion and a refusion. There will never be a day of my life that does not include pain. There is no relief. There is no fix for my spine. Every single disc from neck down is bulging in some way. I have some that are degraded so bad the bone's trying to fuse itself. Pain is my daily existence. But how I deal with my pain, how I deal with my life is my choice. And my faith is what helps me make that choice every single day. You see, when I was a child, I was laying on the floor in a patch of sunlight in my room like a cat. And all of a sudden the light warmed. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, more than I knew my name, more than I knew my parents, more than I knew anything in that moment, I knew 2 things were true. 1, God existed and I was in the presence of God. And 2, God was love. And in that moment, I felt called so deeply to spread the message of love, to spread the message of Christ. And then I got to high school, and I went to a Catholic high school, and what I learned in that time was so very different than what my grandfather, Ivan Richardson, who used to be a member of this church, an OG Mo crew, he taught me that Jesus was a radical Jesus of love. And then I learned about the Crusades and the bloody history of Christianity, and frankly, I was angry. And so I left the church, but it was when I was living in a homeless shelter, addicted to pain medication after my 4th back surgery in 2013, that I was in the Open Door Missions New Life Recovery Program. And one of their requirements was I had to go to church. And I said, fine, but I'm not going to one of your homophobic churches. So my grandfather drove down to the Open Door Mission and picked me up and drove me back here every Sunday to First United Methodist. Shortly after I got out of the program, I joined the choir. And I can confidently say, as I was listening to Mark's story, because I recorded and edited all these videos, it made me realize I don't know where I would be if he weren't here. Singing in the choir literally healed me in ways I didn't think possible. I found who I call my sister. I adopted her as an adult, Michelle Rosenthal. I found her in the choir. This place made me brave. It reignited my ability to persevere and get me through. It showed me a community of healing and love like I had never experienced before. And through acts of service to this church and being able to use my photography skills to highlight what was happening in the streets, I was able to step up to the plate. I was able to heal. And life, as I was reading Marianne Buddy's book, life is a series of going and staying and stepping up and let down and accepting things you cannot change. But it is all about perseverance. And I'll be honest, there were times that I did not want to persevere. There were times where I was hospitalized for trying to exit this world. There were times where previous relationships told me my kids would be better off if I were dead. And I thought that was reality. But it was this place. It was the faith I found here. It was my faith in God, the calling I heard as a child, the people I met in this space, and the healing that I found here that made me realize that, oh, no. I want to stay around. I want to be here. I will persevere because I love the beauty that life has to offer. It is so hard to live this life. Life is inherently traumatic no matter who you are. But staying the course, persevering despite everything. I joke around a lot that I exist out of spite, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, I exist despite my disability. I exist despite the hurdles that I've been given. I exist despite the setbacks that I've had. I continue despite the barriers I have had to overcome. I will continue to operate out of that level of spite because it is a spite fueled by love. So there may be times where I want to go because this is hard. And there may be times where I'm like, nope, I gotta stay. And there are other times where I'm like, oh, that is not what I wanted, and I have to accept it. And other times I will be super let down. Whether that's my ministry, how fast my education's going, or that I get to do things. But at the end of the day, to me, what matters is that I continue to persevere. Because Jesus called me to love my neighbor. Jesus called me to bring love into the world. And while I can't control the circumstances of my life, I can't control the hand I've been dealt. I control how I react to it. I control how I decide to live my life. I decide whether or not I'm going to let it run me, or I'm still going to find the moments of beauty and joy that make this life worth living. That's my choice. That's how I persevere. And as we've listened to all of the stories of bravery, each more different than the last, one thread remains. We all have the strength to do anything. Together, separate, in community, apart. But our perseverance, our stepping up to the plate, our dealing with inevitable letdown, and dealing with things we cannot change, all of that makes us a beautiful, beloved community. All of that makes us brave. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being brave.